Lately, when I'm looking to redo my wardrobe for a particular season, I'm trying really hard to focus more on quality over quantity, building a wardrobe out of things that are well made and versatile and easy to reach for every day and always make me feel good. That is why I keep coming back to Quince. The fabrics feel elevated, the fits are thoughtful, the prices are good, and I really do like a bargain. Beautiful everyday pieces using premium materials, things like 100% European linen, things that are actually made of silk, which is hard to find these days, super soft denim. They have styles that start around $50, and the focus on materials carries over to their accessories, including leather handbags that really look a lot more expensive than they actually are. They work with ethical factories, which I really like. They cut out middlemen, so you are paying for quality rather than brand markup. Lately, I have had my eye for spring on a brown blouse. It's silk, it's got puff sleeves and little white polka dots, and I really think it's something that I would feel great in. So you might see me in that sometime soon. You can refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/KERA for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now also available in Canada. Quince.com/KERA for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/KERA.
Funding for the Think podcast comes from Wise, an app for people using money around the globe. With the Wise account, you can send, spend, and receive in up to 40 currencies. You can download the Wise app or learn more at wise.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Graduation season is, of course, a time for celebration of the hard work students have put in to earn their diploma or degree. But anybody finishing their education in 2026 is graduating into a weird employment market full of upsetting rumblings about AI taking over the chores of what were once entry-level human jobs. And even in the best of economies, plenty of people reach adulthood without knowing for sure what they want to be when they grow up. From KERA in Dallas, this is Think. I'm Chris Boyd. When we're not sure what to do with our careers, it can be tempting to just figure out which fields pay the most. But while money does matter, choosing a profession that fills your bank account but not your soul is a recipe for decades of dissatisfaction. And in my experience, we spend way too much of our waking lives at work to settle for something that makes us miserable 8 hours a day. Jodi Kantor's day job is as an investigative reporter for the New York Times. Lately, she's been focused on covering the Supreme Court. A few years ago, she won a Pulitzer for breaking the Harvey Weinstein story. She loves her work. But in her new book, she shares it wasn't always clear what her mission should be. And she has some advice for people still trying to work out what it is they are meant to do. The book is titled How to Start: Discovering Your Life's Work. Jodi, welcome back to Think.
It's great to speak with you.
How did you realize many young people are experiencing a kind of existential dread about what happens after they finish school?
Well, it was a couple of ways, but it crystallized in one moment. About a year ago, I got an email from Columbia, which is my undergraduate institution, asking me to give the undergraduate commencement address, which is a huge honor, obviously. But honestly, it was not that good an offer because you remember what was going on at Columbia at the time: real chaos, real dysfunction, real rancor. And my friends were like, call in sick. Don't do it. You're going to get booed. But something in me said, give me those kids for 15 minutes because I was very upset to see what had happened on that campus. And this was my chance to step in. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I appreciate, I'm very honored by your invitation. But there's one thing I have to do, which is I've got to spend some time with the students because this is obviously a room I need to read very carefully, given how delicate the situation is. So I got on a Zoom with students and they gave me an incredible assignment, Chris. Like you and I are journalists, we love hard questions. They gave me a really tough one. They said, we don't want to talk about Israel. We don't want to talk about Gaza. We don't want to talk about President Trump. We don't want to talk about the university administration we're all sick of. They said our class, despite all of its political differences, is united in one question, which is how are we supposed to find and start our life's work in this crazy environment? And the question really hit me hard. In part because I'm a mom, I have a 20-year-old. So I've got kids around my dinner table all the time asking this question. In part because I've covered employment my whole career. I've written a lot about the digitization of the workplace. We're seeing it peak with AI now, but the truth is it's been happening for at least a decade. I also, I reported the Harvey Weinstein story with Megan Twohey. And so I felt that I had exposed some of the worst of the workplace, and yet I did not want students to give up on it. I had been traveling, you and I met when I spoke last year at Texas Women's University, and I've done a lot of appearances like that. I've traveled to campuses across the country to talk to students about journalism and particularly seeking their life's work. And year over year, I had noticed a feeling of rising frustration and cynicism and dread about work. Part of what was so interesting was that that the frustrations were generational. Like when we were at Texas Women's University, I mean, that's a school that has lifted a lot of low income students into the middle class. It's a public university. Well, the things I heard there were the same things I was hearing at Stanford and Yale. Even though these are different schools and the students are in different situations, there are these common strands of concerns you hear everywhere that a fulfilling job is only for a rich kid.
Hmm.
That even if you manage to get a good job, it's not going to be enough to pay the rent or buy a decent place to live. The young people have an increasingly dystopian view of the workplace. We we associate graduation with like brightness and starting and energy and endeavor and exploration. And that is not what all students are feeling right now. There is really a lot of fear to the point where I even stumbled on like an inside joke from students' text chains. There are a whole bunch of students now who, instead of writing the word job, they write j asterisk b because the word is scary to them. So anyway, we'll talk more about what's really going on with the job picture. But the question gripped me because I felt them losing faith in the workplace and it scared me, Chris. The stakes are too high. We can't give up on work. They can't afford to do that individually, but also work is our engine of collective progress. So I gave the speech. It's on YouTube if you're curious, but I couldn't stop writing, and that's how this book emerged.
For people who haven't had to apply for a job in the last decade or so, everybody should understand it now all pretty much starts online. And people are screened online. And this made me think, Jody, about how hard it is to deal with like a complicated bank issue or a problem with a tech device when you're only able to access a robot. I can't imagine trying to convince a robot of how somebody's unique temperament and motivation might be ideal for a company that is hiring.
Correct. I'm so glad you asked me that because listen, I'm turning 51 today, actually. I haven't applied for a job
Happy birthday.
in thank you, a long time. But I want to be very specific and clear on the reports from young people about what it's like to apply for a job. I want to give you real facts because I want you to understand that they're not exaggerating. Like what they're facing compared to what we did, Chris, it's it is I'm trying to think of the right word to express it to you. It's intimidating and it's dehumanizing. Applying for a job has been digitized. We think of applying for a job as a social experience, even
Mm-hmm.
if it's anxiety inducing. It involves handshakes and meeting new people and sparks of conversation and trips into offices. No, 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 no. This is becoming a more and more digital thing. Think of massive career portals. Think of job listings that may or may not be ghost listings where, you're applying to jobs, but you can't even tell if a real position exists or not. Think of your resume and cover letter being examined by AI and not by real people. And most of all, I want you to think about AI interviews.
Mm.
It is increasingly true that the job interview is being run by AI, not by real people. So what that means is that, okay, so like say you are lucky enough to get an appointment for an interview, told to log on at a certain time, you make an appointment, and you're asked questions via AI. Some formats have like a text or voice series of questions. Others actually have like these AI personas, like these cutesy little characters
Wow.
that are asking you questions. And some of the programs say, like, oh, okay, you've got 30 seconds to prepare your answer. So, Chris, somebody is asking you, like, tell me a challenge, tell me a time. So the AI is asking you, Chris, tell me about a time you had to work out a conflict with a colleague, or tell me about a time you had to change your plans at the last minute. Tell me about a creative solution, you derived to an urgent problem. And you record your answer like as a video, but nobody watches the video, Chris. Your words are taken and crunched by the AI, which then sends recommendations to the company in terms of, who to take seriously, who to do a final round interview with. And what I've talked to a ton of young people who have done this. I've never found anyone who liked it. What they say is it's dehumanizing. They say that it's a really weird way to begin a relationship with an employer, potentially. It's like, I'm going to give my life and my finances over to you, and you can't even get on the phone with me. They say it's lonely. I
Mm.
think that word is really, really important. And they say they can't learn anything from it. We think of a job interview as a two-way exchange in which you're getting something
Yeah.
as the interviewee, right? You're picking up on body language. You're able to ask questions about the company. I mean, I'm a little bit embarrassed to tell you that I applied for a job at Goldman Sachs my senior year of college. I mean, I think, I just threw my hat in, but I was chosen for interviews, and I spent a day interviewing at the Goldman Sachs offices in Lower Manhattan. It was completely wrong for me, completely wrong to the point where one of the interviewers said to me, you should really be a journalist or something. However, however, I spent a day of my life at Goldman Sachs.
Mm.
It was interesting. It was anthropological. I was a spy in the house of work. I said things that came out good, and I said things that I regretted saying, and then I learned something about job interviewing because I got negative feedback. Um, that is the opposite of an AI interview. An AI interview gives you nothing. You don't even have the chance to say, tell me more about what it's like to be an entry-level worker at this company. It reduces the applicant to being a pure supplicant and nothing more.
So, what are some alternative paths to, at the very least, meeting people who are employed in the kinds of companies people are interested in?
Okay, so this is in the book. Here's what's happening. So these kind of like digital application systems, they're not really working out that well for anyone, as far as I can tell. Employers, I think, are also pretty frustrated because it actually becomes really hard to tell applicants apart. AI is very homogenizing because people are using keywords in their resumes and their cover letters. Like that's what you have to do. You have to feed the AI the keywords it wants. But then, Chris, everybody uses the same
Right,
keywords.
right.
And so everybody looks the same. It's like this giant mush of young people. And the things that make people interesting and distinctive and promising in the workplace, their funky edges, their interesting experiences, their extraordinary talents become harder to see. So, what is actually happening is that personal connections are more important than ever. And so, what I do in the book is I understand that not everybody has personal connections, right? And we don't want a situation where just the Nepo babies are winning.
Hmm.
So I have some tricks, let's call them techniques, because I'm a journalist and I'm an investigative journalist. And what do I do all day? I reach out to people I don't know and I try to connect and earn their trust and engage. And so the book has a cheat sheet of an investigative journalist's tips and tricks for forging a connection with strangers. But this is, this is kind of like if you're a young person or any person applying for a job now, the number one piece of advice I'm hearing from the experts I've been interviewing is you have got to find the back door. You have got to form a real connection. And part of that, by the way, is getting more intel on the job posting because a lot of these job postings are only half the story, right? There's often a deeper read on here's what the company really wants. Here's why the last guy didn't work out. If you can if you can get some intel on what is really wanted in this position, you have greatly enlarged your chances of actually landing it.
We should say, Jody, some people may be listening to this and saying, oh, getting the job that sounds amazing and challenging, but I don't even know yet what to do. Lest people think that you, Jody Cantor, journalism superstar, Pulitzer winner, had an easier path to this, you share a pretty astonishing story here. You were kicked off the staff of your college newspaper at Columbia?
It's true. It's true. It's true. It's taken me all these years to confess this story, but I do. And the reason why is because I really want to convey that starting is often a mess. I talk
Mm.
to so many young people right now who feel the pressure of perfection. And when I hear them describe their attempts to start, it's almost like they think that starting has to be like one of those Olympic dives where you
Right.
have to be technically perfect. And if there's any splash in the pool, like you're a failure. Starting is not like that. I belly flopped into journalism. I mean, I was kicked off the Columbia paper. It's a crazy story, and I tell it in the book. And then I went running from journalism because I was like, this is terrible. I don't want to be a journalist. And I went to law school. In law school, I had an epiphany that I really, 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 really did want to be a journalist. But as you know, not only did I not have evidence that I could succeed as a journalist, I had evidence to the contrary. I'd been kicked off this paper. And so I am telling this story now because I've finally let go of my embarrassment over it. But I really, I'm just like worried that with this book, young people could see me and they could see that I work at the Times or that I have a Pulitzer. And I want them to understand that starting is always hard. It's a hard life stage, that I struggled, that it's possible to struggle well. And that often in that early struggle are the seeds and ingredients of your future success.
I cannot imagine it was easy to break it to your parents that you were going to drop out of Harvard Law School. And I ask you about this not because I want like Cantor family dirt, but because that whole process really for you was about clarifying what you did and did not want. And for that reason, maybe it wasn't wasted time and effort.
Oh, going to law school was the best thing I ever did because you have to do the wrong thing to find the right thing.
Mm.
So, okay, so a couple things because I really want to relate to where this is today. My parents were very worried. They were very worried. My dad, who was from an immigrant family, was like really rational about money in the sense that he believed, I think, that you should maximize your earning power,
Mhm.
that like you should earn as much as you can earn. And, he certainly hadn't been to a school like Harvard Law School. And when you go to Harvard Law School, your potential earning power all of a sudden gets very high. The idea that I was leaving that on the table for a journalism salary was, I think, like truly upsetting. Like that feeling when you think your kid is making a mistake.
Mhm.
However, they were very supportive. They totally get it now. I think where this applies to today is in two ways. One is about parents. Like, look, I am part of this generation of helicopter parents. We're very, very, very involved. This employment market is pushing us to get more involved because we're so worried about our kids' job prospects. And it really feels like a bait and switch. I mean, all of us devoted ourselves to climbing Mount College, right? Whether like as parents or as students, the dual quest to get in and cover the costs, whether through paying or financial aid, like it kind of feels like we devoted our lives to this pursuit, right? Now, to find out that a really good kid with really good grades and good internships and the whole thing can graduate from college and apply for 150 jobs and not get a bite, that feels terrible. And so it is leading parents to get overly involved in their students' career choices. They and So I think that point number one would be do not let your parents decide your career. And if you're a parent listening to this, like really, I know it's really hard. Try to refrain from trying to decide your child's career because it doesn't come out well, right? They have to live their own lives, not ours. If you're a younger person listening to this, don't let your parent decide your career. If you're a parent listening to this, resist the urge to try to decide your child's career. It just doesn't turn out well because younger people have to live their lives, not their parents' lives. And then the second point it takes me to is a point about risk versus stability. I was just talking with the psychotherapist Esther Perel, who
Mm.
wrote Mating in Captivity. There's actually a great new edition of her book coming out next month. And you may be familiar with her kind of theory of marriage, which is that any marriage or romance needs a balance between stability and security on the one hand and freedom and exploration on the other. And she said to me, she was like, careers are the same way. Like careers need those two ingredients as well. And I think that's right. And a lot of parents, in leaving Harvard Law School, I was choosing to take a risk. And everybody thought I was crazy. It was a really hard story to tell people, most of all my parents. However, it was the moment when I became the author of my own life. And also, it was the risk I needed to take to become who I wanted to be. And the reason I'm mentioning this now and the reason I'm tying it to the parent thing is that this is a hard atmosphere in which to take risks and in which to watch our children take risks. Everything feels so topsy-turvy. It feels so unstable. We all crave stability right now. But the problem is that if you don't take on any risk, you don't really get anywhere. I mean, Chris, have you ever what would be like a career risk that you took?
Oh, I moved out of journalism temporarily for a job that was only marginally related to journalism in the internet industry. And that for me, I wouldn't say it was my Harvard, but it was a risk that I took. I realized that wasn't what I wanted, and then I got back into journalism afterward.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, do you regret it or do you feel the risk paid off in some way?
Oh no, it absolutely paid off. It got me out of the city that I was working in into a city where there were many more opportunities. No, I think it was a great growth experience. And knowing that I worked a couple years in a job I hated was actually a great way to show me that I really love the work that I've done ever since.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I love what you're saying, Chris, because I think everybody wants to bypass struggle,
Mm.
but it's the struggle that makes us who we are. Like if to me, listen, are there some people who know that, from age 17, they want to be a neurosurgeon and like it may be very hard, but the direction is clear and all they have to do is study and work very hard? Sure. Great. Congrats to those people are not my people. My people are the confused people who are interested in five different things and need to struggle and need to work it through. And what I would say is that trying to avoid that struggle is a huge mistake because it's possible to struggle well and to struggle joyfully and to obtain better results in the long term because you are truly going through a process of exploration and learning and growth.
This show is supported by Blue Land. We hear a lot about microplastics in oceans and food, but they can also come from products we use every day at home, including cleaning products. Blue Land is on a mission to make it easy for everyone to make sustainable choices. Blue Land believes that hardworking, clean products can be the norm, not the exception, so that you can do better for your family and the planet at the same time. From cleaning sprays and toilet bowl cleaner to dishwasher and laundry detergent tablets, Blue Land's products are independently tested to perform alongside major brands, and the formulas are free from dyes, parabens, and harsh chemicals. You'll love not having to choose between the safe option and what actually gets your house clean. Blue Land is a certified B Corp and Leaping Bunny cruelty-free certified. Their formulas are EPA's Safer Choice certified, and many products have also earned Cradle to Cradle's Gold Material Health Certificate. If you're looking to make a small change in your routine, you can get 15% off your first order at blueland.com/prx. Get 15% off your first order by going to blueland.com/prx. blueland.com/prx.
When you talk about joyful struggle, I would call this book a celebration of the development of craft. So, talk about what the word means to you as it applies to any number of careers in which anyone's learning is really just beginning the day they graduate from whatever education they've pursued to get that job.
Okay, so when I got this graduation speech assignment from Columbia, I had to think about what can I say that is actually going to help, right? They've posed this really hard question. How do you start when everything feels so broken? And I said to myself, I really have to answer this, right? Like I need to give them something real and something that's uplifting and galvanizing without having any notes of false optimism. So I looked around my life. I looked around all the people I had covered over the years. And I also looked at this atmosphere in which there were all these ideas about like the right or wrong thing to study that I didn't trust, right? I'd watched the roller coaster over the course of my life of like, when I was in high school, it was learn Japanese. Everybody was supposed to learn Japanese because the Japanese were supposedly going to take over the world economy. Well, that didn't happen. And then it was genetics, and then it was Mandarin, and then it was computer science. And these are all great pursuits, but the idea that any of them is going to be like a golden ticket is wrong. So I said, what do you look for? What do you look for? What do you look for? And I wanted to come up with really like durable, time-tested materials too, because we don't know what the workplace is going to look like in 10 or 20 years. So I want young people to look for two things. I want them to look for a craft and a need, and I want them to recognize the magic of pairing them. A craft is something you know how to do that other people don't. It's an expertise or a skill. Chris, you are a fabulous interviewer. You really know how to get the best out of a conversation like this. Some of my colleagues at the Times are expert recipe writers. They write such good recipes that even an amateur home cook can make them come out really, really good. A surgeon practices a craft. That's an obvious one, right? A teacher practices a craft. Absolutely. And so the provocative question I want to ask young people is, what is your craft going to be? What is going to be the thing that makes you not disposable and not interchangeable? And there are a couple of reasons I want everyone to have a craft. One is that if you work very hard and this takes time, you get to a mastery of craft that is very enjoyable, right? I do these complicated newspaper investigations now, the Harvey Weinstein one, but also more recently, the Supreme Court. I've been delving into the Supreme Court. We published a big story this weekend. I've gotten to the point where I can really enjoy that work because these are muscles that I've built for years. So number one is I want you to have the pleasure and satisfaction of being really good at something. So, other people saying, wow, John is the one who is trusted and relied upon and virtuoso. The second thing is that the job market, as we know, is cruel. It's ugly. and you can be fired at any time, but your craft can never be taken away from you. And so that makes it really valuable in this moment. So anyway, I want to stop talking and give you a sec, but maybe we can also explain how that relates to need.
I do want to talk about need because people, I mean, you hear this and you think, well, the world needs somebody to cure cancer and the world needs somebody to, educate fourth graders. You explain that need doesn't absolutely have to be solving a critical crisis issue.
Yeah, we think of so craft is number one. Craft is authority. Need is propulsion. And when we say need, like there's an association with altruism, but I mean it in a bigger sense than that because the best businesses are based on need as well. So if we talk about need, the question to ask is, okay, young people, what is your independent assessment of what society will need most in coming decades? What kind of products, what kind of care, what kind of information? What do you see with your own eyes? Let's get away from hollow conventional wisdom that may fail you. Let's make your own assessment. And the reason I think that is powerful is that need is gas, need is fuel, need is what speeds things up and pushes you along. And really, the most important reason to talk about need right now is that the kind of AI revolution is sending young people a very negative message, which is that they're not needed, right? Like people graduating from college right now, entry level workers, they're being told, a machine can do entry level jobs. A machine can be a paralegal or be a junior analyst. And the implicit, sometimes the explicit message is, you're not needed. That is a damaging message. It's a degrading message, and it's false. It's false. Of course, we need the contributions of young people. Of course, we need their energy and ideas. Anybody who has worked will tell you that you need an infusion of new talent in the workplace. It's what refreshes the place, it's a key to growth. And so, by having a need, I want young people to feel that they are on a path to being needed, that other human beings depend on them. And then I think the real magic is when you pair craft and need. When those two things intersect, that's when a career becomes really powerful. And I can give you some examples if you're curious.
Yeah, absolutely.
The craft of handling breast cancer well and doing the surgery well and the way they repair your body afterwards, it is so profound, Chris. You know, they can do amazing things. And then the need, I mean, come on, right? Like you and I know a new woman every week who gets diagnosed with breast cancer. This is, an epidemic among our age group. And so the meeting of craft and need is so profound. I'm not saying that these doctors have it perfect. There are problems in the field, as with every field, but in general, that meaning of craft and need, it gives their work urgency, authority, respect. They, I think, are earning very good money. They are also doing a public service.
We should talk here about money, Jody. Education is expensive, life is expensive. Some people may feel compelled between choosing to starve for a passion career and thrive financially in a field that doesn't really feel very exciting. And you insist this is a false choice.
I, I think it is because, and listen, I don't understand why our universities don't say this because I think it's pretty obvious. I think there are three goals, especially like if you've had a 4-year college education, if you've had the best education that this country has to offer, studying fascinating areas of human endeavor, I think your goal for your working life is trifold. I think you want financial stability plus. right? Things are so expensive, whether it's rent or a cup of coffee. It's very important to say, like, you have got to be able to provide a decent life or better for yourself and your family. That is absolutely a goal. Then I would say, second, the goal is to feel connected to your work. The goal is to enjoy it. I mean, that, like, we spend so many of our hours at work. We don't want you hating your job. So say call goal number two, hour to hour job satisfaction. And then I think the third goal is to somehow contribute something to other people. Like through our work, you and I are trying to contribute really high quality journalism that both involves a lot of fact, but can also be very enthralling. So I think those are the three goals. And yeah, I've got a lot of students coming to me saying, do I sell out and do the lucrative thing that I hate, or do I follow my passion and not have any conventional success at all? And it's like, don't embrace that binary,
Mm.
so I'll tell you a story. Um, a friend of my daughter's came to me a year or two ago, and she was struggling with this problem. And she said to me, my mom is a dancer, but she's only made pennies. And my dad is in finance and he's satisfied. But for me, it would be kind of soulless to go into finance. And Jody, I'm really tortured. What should I do? Do I follow my mom's path or my dad's? So I'm a reporter. I like to find information. And I also wanted to like shock her out of some of her preconceptions. So, as you know, because you're a reporter too, you can find the salaries of top nonprofit leaders in public documents, like they're in tax filings that are online. So I go and I find out what the top arts administrators in the country make. Chris, it's like
They're doing
it's a
okay.
lot of money.
Yeah.
Chris, it's like really, these are very high salaries. And listen, these are rarefied positions, right? I mean, not everybody is going to be paid seven figures for their taste in contemporary art, but this museum director is making $1.4 million a year, and this museum director is making 1.2, and this head of a theater is making $900,000 a year, and so on and so on and so on. And I show her, and her jaw is like on the floor. Like the idea that you can make that kind of money in the arts, she had no idea. She didn't even know it existed. So then I'm writing the money chapter. I'm writing the money chapter. Da, 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 da. It's a hard chapter to write because I mean, giving advice to people about money is tricky, especially you don't know who you're talking to and what kind of financial background they're from. Writing the chapter, writing the chapter, writing the chapter, and then I was like, wait, for all of these fancy arts administrators I just named, we got to find out what they made in their first jobs.
Mm.
So I call or email all of them, and they have great stories about making very little money as they started. One of the one of the administrators who makes like the most money, he started out in the gift shop
Huh.
of a museum, which, as you know, is like the least prestigious place to work there, right? That's not where the go-getters are generally found. But he managed the gift shop. He turned it around and used it as a springboard into the main part of the museum. And so, what I was trying to show with those stories is that, the measure of your earning power is not what you make in that first year or two after college. You're looking for an entry level job where you can earn but also learn.
Sometimes, to go back to craft for a minute, our acquisition of craft, Jody, is visible only in hindsight, right? Like day to day as we're slogging through, it's not evident that we're having these experiences in these early jobs that will add up to insight and skill down the line. If someone is not in a profession where those efforts are rewarded with a lot of early promotions or raises, what ideas do you have for measuring progress toward craft?
It's such a great question. So in the book, there's a guy named Arjab Ezekiel, and he is like the toast of the restaurant industry now because he and his wife run this restaurant Birdies. It's quite a sensation. The main attraction is the cooking, but they've also kind of re-engineered the model of what a fine dining restaurant can be. So the guy is like written up everywhere. He and his wife were in magazines. They've won awards. They're like the toast of the restaurant world right now. However, his story started off very humbly. He went to college, wanted to be a lawyer or a policy person in DC. He was an undocumented immigrant, so he couldn't get any of those jobs despite having good grades and whatnot because he didn't have the legal working papers. So instead, he gets a job as a server because, the restaurant industry is easier for people in that situation. And it feels like such a step down for him. He's waiting on the lawyers and the policy people in DC whose ranks he had wanted to join. And he resigns himself to it. He's like, look, I can't change my immigration situation. I guess that, I guess restaurant work it is for the rest of my life. And so night after night, he's doing service, he's observing, he's watching. He explained to me that about 4 years in, something shifted for him where he said time began to slow down in the restaurant. And he said, I would have these moments where I became so perceptive in terms of tracking what was going on with people
Mm.
that it was like I could freeze frame the dining room and study it in that instant and know what was going on. So 4 years into this like really humble restaurant work that, would not look good on LinkedIn, very hard to brag about, he experienced this growth in his craft. And it's a longer story, it's in the book, but he directly attributes those slogs as a waiter to the success of his restaurant today. He was understanding something very deep about the way restaurants function and about what customers want.
We can't always choose our boss, especially when jobs are hard to come by, but there are good ones out there. On the other hand, people early in their careers tend to think of the boss as someone they work for. What can a good supervisor do for us? And how can people starting out in their careers know they found one?
I think one of the biggest differentiators when you look at long-term success or happiness is the people who go to work for good people tend to really thrive and prosper, and the people who don't have a much harder time. And I think it's really lost often on young people because, it's cool to get a job at a big company that people have heard of with a brand name, but the quality of your boss, it's like the quality of your spouse.
Mm.
Like it determines so much of your happiness. And my own first boss in journalism was Michael Kinsley. I tell a story about him in the book. Um, and he was not only teaching me and other young people at Slate a lot about journalism, but he was really looking out for our long-term interests.
How did he do that?
Yeah, okay, so I drop out of law school. I get this job at like a very early Slate magazine. I'm an editorial assistant, and Mike offers me a big promotion. He says he will move me to the Seattle office and make me a co-managing editor. I mean, my ego needed this so badly, Chris. Here I dropped out of law school. Everybody thought I was a mess. It wasn't clear I'd ever be successful in journalism. To get an offer of a promotion a few months in it was amazing. So the job was in Seattle, and I lived in New York. So I jumped out there on a plane. The air smelled amazing. I was like, let's go, let's do this. And then Mike and I were finalizing everything in the Microsoft cafeteria. And he was about 50 years old at that point. And he said to me, is there any reason you might not take this job? Is there anything keeping you in New York? And I said, well, I have a boyfriend. But then I added, but I'm a big feminist and I don't believe in either staying anywhere or leaving anywhere for a guy until you're 25 years old and I'm only 24, so I'm fine. I'm coming to Seattle. And to his credit, Mike did not laugh at me. He instead was very tender and he said, Jody, I've been single my entire life. That later became not true. He married somebody wonderful, but at the time it was. He said, people like you and me are always going to have opportunities in the workplace. Finding a life partner is one of the hardest things to do. And he said, he said, do you think there's a chance you would marry this guy? That you have this guy you're dating back in New York? Um, and I said, yeah, there's a chance. And he said, I'm withdrawing the promotion. He said, I will not be responsible for breaking up what could be a happy marriage. Now, it was really outrageous, Chris, because like it was probably illegal. I mean, employers are not supposed to make job decisions based on the romantic status of young employees. But it was the best thing he ever could have done for me. And all these years later, Ron and I are married and we have 2 kids. And he could have looked out for his immediate interest, which was to have me come to the office and help him with stuff. And instead, he looked out for mine. And it really made all the difference.
This book, Jody, is clearly written for young people looking ahead to their working lives. But like, if their parents or older folks in their lives pick it up, what advice do you have to people already in careers they love with regard to how they should relate to their younger colleagues and what we owe them?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I mean, this is a question both, this is it. There are two versions of this answer for parents, right? And then for older colleagues. For parents, it's about how to parent well through this employment crisis. It's very tricky. There are a lot of feelings, right? A lot of shame, a lot of hope, a lot of expectation, big financial questions about what to do if your child can't get a job or is underemployed, et cetera, et cetera. But let's go to your let's go to the second part of your question, which is what is the role of people like us? What I want to do is really call for a reinvigoration of mentorship. The digital job landscape, which we discussed, is so lonely. It's so off-putting. You don't get to talk to anybody. And so we need to somehow counteract that. We need to send a message that people our age care, that we are the tour guides and the protectors for young people coming into the workplace. And, like if you're listening to this, I would say if you have even just a few minutes to help a young person, do it. It's funny, my book tour just started and we have no Texas plans, I'm sorry to say, but we did the kickoff event in Brooklyn on Sunday night with Esther Perel and Priya Parker. And for the Q&A session at the end, we did all students, like all young people. We didn't do any of the older crowd. And they had amazing questions, and a couple of them had particular career questions. The response was, it was really, really, really heartwarming because I think young people have been kind of maligned in the world. And the idea that we can express them, the idea that we can express respect to them and enlist them in our efforts is very appealing.
Jody Kantor is an investigative reporter for the New York Times, a winner of the Pulitzer Prize, and author of the new book, How to Start, Discovering Your Life's Work. Jody, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. I know you've got to get back to the shadow docket. Thank you for making time for us.
Okay, great. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Think is distributed by PRX, the Public Radio Exchange. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, anywhere you get podcasts, and at think.kera.org. Again, I'm Chris Boyd. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.